It all starts with this. This is the ultimate power.
Hello, everybody. It's me, your good friend Sparky, and welcome back to Sonic Heroes. We are venturing back into the Frog Forest with Team Rose. And by extension, we also get a look at what might quite possibly be Big the Cat's personal heaven. Surrounded by froggies, and with endless opportunities to fish. Because I'm sure with all of the rain that the frogs cause around here, it creates quite a few lovely little fishing spots scattered about. Maybe somewhere on the jungle floor down there, when we're not running above everything on the giant vines and mushrooms and things like that. If you can find a way to safely get down there, I'm sure there are plenty of little lakes and ponds to do lots and lots of fishing in. And Big the Cat would be very, very pleased at all of that. Though it does bring up the question of, is Big the Cat's froggy-smelling senses disturbed by this area at all? Do the other frogs interfere with that? Or does Froggy have a specific smell to them that Big the Cat knows by heart? It is entirely possible. They are best friends. But you just gotta love how simple Big is overall. The whole thing with him, his whole personality, his whole mission is in life, is just to go fishing and to go looking for his friend Froggy. No matter what game he ends up in, that is all he's doing, and that is all that really ends up needing to be done. He goes on his own adventure in Sonic Adventure. He goes on his cameo adventures in Sonic Adventure 2. Even in Sonic and the Secret Rings, he ends up in the mythical storybook of the Arabian Nights, I think while seeking out Froggy. And that's really all that ends up mattering to him. It's all very nice. And overall, this entire stage, much like a lot of the Team Rose stages, it's basically just a shorter version of the Team Sonic and Team Dark stage. And honestly, it's not bad, because one advantage I definitely will say for Team Rose, even though the stages are shorter and they're definitely a lot easier, it does give you a lot more of an opportunity to sort of appreciate the stages. You're not worried about crazy tough enemies messing with you and ruining your day or anything like that. You get more of an opportunity to just look at and appreciate the different mechanics and things like that. Like these propeller flowers. It's super neat. Use your tornado, you fly around in the air, your characters will wobble all over the place like crazy nutballs. And it's a lot of fun and a lot of creative thought that went into stages like this. When you're focusing on surviving with Team Dark and Team Sonic, you don't always get that opportunity to really just kind of stop and think about it and really appreciate the level design and stuff like that. Like, we're already done with this stage. So, it's a fun little simple thing. It's the simple things in life, really. You find your friend Froggy, you find all of his relatives in a giant forest, and you just have a good time. That being said, I'm not sure if there's a way to maybe glitch the game out and get to other parts of it that they don't intend you to get to in Team Rose. It does bring up an interesting question of how much of the levels still exist when you're playing as them, even though they are half the length or possibly even shorter than the regular stages. It does make me wonder. Is there a way to get to the missing chunks of stages and things like that? Because I know that in Sonic Adventure DX, there are ways that you can kind of glitch out the game and end up venturing into levels with certain characters that you're not supposed to, and they still end up functioning. Like, I know for one example, it's possible to glitch Knuckles into Emerald Coast, even though that is usually a stage that is reserved for Sonic. And it does make me wonder if you could do certain things like that with these characters, with Team Rose. Because there are definitely certain areas and certain gimmicks that they just do not interact with at all, and it just kind of makes me wonder if... do those elements still exist for Team Rose? Like, if you could find a way to them, would they still work? I'm not sure. Huh. It requires some looking into and research. Like, are the missing parts of Team Rose's stages still there in Team Rose's stages, or are they just kind of deleted entirely? I can't really say. Because I never really thought about it before, but it would definitely be something interesting to look into. But either way, we're continuing forward through the Lost Jungle. Kind of got lost in my ramble there. Sorry about that. And again, it's more or less just the shorter version of the Team Sonic and Team Dark stage. Considering parts that Team Rose does not interact with, I'm pretty sure the crocodile chase is omitted entirely from their version of the stage here. They kind of have a similar starting point in both cases, but stages they end much earlier in this case for both Frog Forest and Lost Jungle here. That being said, we still end up falling off the edge accidentally. And we still end up encountering some of the tougher enemies and things like that. And it does emphasize kind of the strategy difference between the different power characters when you're encountering the really big enemies. We saw earlier, it did give us a battle with one of those giant enemies, the really big guys with lots of HP. And Big the Cat, and by extension Vector the Crocodile, they can end up having a harder time dealing with those sort of enemies because they're not as fast to their attacks. It takes a little while for them to load up their ammunition, so to speak. And by ammunition, I mean their friends. So it's definitely more worth taking care of enemies like that long distance, instead of trying to get up close and personal. All that being said, it doesn't really end up affecting the speed at which you can fight them. And saving up your Team Blast and using it instead is usually, regardless, the more effective strategy. Because it really just makes the fight that much simpler. Just a quick use Team Blast, wipe everything out on screen. Aside from the actual boss battles, the Team Blasts always have that effect where they wipe out enemies instantaneously, so it's definitely worth hanging on to. And, well, we're done with Team Rose already. Yeah, pretty standard at this point. Team Rose are just little 3-minute romps. They're fun. Not too complicated. And like I said, it does give you the time to sort of more appreciate the level design and things like that when you're not too worried about being surrounded by killer robots and avoiding giant death gimmicks and things like that. It's very nice. I'm so happy I want to tell everyone! And Cream is apparently very, very happy this time around. But we are venturing forward next with Team Chaotix and their mission through the Frog Forest. Let's see what the client has in store for them.
Here's your next mission. There are huge frogs in this jungle. Once they start to roar, it will start to rain and they'll be spotted easily. Get through the jungle without being detected by the frogs.
So yes, this is another stage where SBO's invisibility is key and paramount, and kind of ends up being a solo SBO stage because of that. It is definitely a test of the speed mechanics and SBO skills, how effectively you can get through a level without relying on Charmy or Vector. That being said, considering you don't end up playing as them a lot, I'm wondering how much it really ends up affecting your end scores at the end of the stage. Considering you have 3 different scores that are kind of determined by how much you play as the different characters. Obviously, in stages like this, when you are focusing on being stealthy and not being spotted by frogs in this case, or enemies in an earlier stage's case, it does reduce the amount of playtime you have with Vector and Charmy, so I wonder if that really ends up having a very big ranking effect, or at all. That being said, running through the stage with just SBO is definitely the ideal strategy, because if you're not familiar with the stage, it ends up, you end up with the segments like this where maybe you're running a little too fast and you're not sure where the frogs are going to be coming from. So, you definitely got to stick to SBO and sort of prevent him from being spotted. Because if you're roaming around with Charmy or Vector, obviously you're going to be right in the line of sight of frogs. And they do like to sneak attack you like that, with frogs just at the end of spring jumps. I guess you only really end up having, you only really end up triggering the frogs if you're directly in front of them. So you might be able to maneuver around with Charmy or Vector as long as you're kind of staying behind them. But I don't really know what the, like, area of effect of the frog's vision is, I guess you could say. Do they trigger if you get too close behind them? Do they trigger if you end up touching them? Obviously, when you're invisible with SBO, the entire point with this mission is to not trigger them at all, and they don't seem to be aware of you in any way, shape, or form. When you're kind of surrounding them or even near them while you're invisible. And then you have opportunities, situations like this where you've got to fight off enemies in addition to dealing with the frogs. I feel like in that case, you got to be careful of knockback and things like that, because you might end up being knocked right into a frog's line of sight, and that would end up making the mission a complete bust in that case. Though, all in all, considering the fact that you are mostly going to be spending your time running through this level with this flower that is going absolutely insane, I don't understand how you're even supposed to really keep track of what direction your character's facing. Considering you end up spending most of your time ignoring enemies and not really paying much attention to them, it does end up making the stage feel that much shorter. Though I guess they're probably designed to be pretty short in general, just so you don't get worn out with stealth mechanics. That's the end of the stage already, and we've successfully avoided detection by the frogs, which will then become not an issue in the next stage, considering it's filled with more frogs. I don't know what the difference is, why these frogs are any worse than the frogs in the next stage. But whatever, it all ends up working out, and yeah, as a result, we end up having actually a higher score with Vector than SBO. Weird.
No complaints.
I guess that's because he was the one that was fighting enemies most of the time, and that's where a lot of your points come from. Huh, it's weird. But we've got to venture into the Lox Jungle next and see what our next mission is. We can spend another time analyzing Sonic Heroes score mechanics, I guess.
Here's your next mission. There are young in this jungle. You must protect them from Eggman. Protect Dontcha.
So in a way, this mission ends up becoming kind of a combination of Team Chaotix's first two missions. The journey for seeking out hermit crabs combined with the second mission, which was finding a Chow that was being guarded by Dr. Eggman's troops. Dr. Eggman seems interested in Chow for whatever reason in this game. So, we need to venture through the jungle and protect them from the evil doctor. And honestly, this level ends up giving us an opportunity to look into some more of the sort of quirks of Team Chaotix and how these sort of missions work. Obviously, we've got our countdown in the corner there, which keeps track of how many Chow we've collected. Or whatever we happen to be collecting at the time. Hermit crabs, poker chips, whatever. And it does end up leading to an interesting observation with this. See, we're gonna end up falling off the stage in just a second here. Not to spoil anything, but SBO gets a little too roll happy and ends up falling off the cliff here. Yeah. And obviously that sends us back to an earlier part of the stage. But, importantly, it does give you an opportunity to go back to areas where you might have missed Chow. We got a fourth Chow there that we had walked by entirely in the first place. So, losing a life, like right here, for example, yeah. Losing a life can end up actually being strategic, I guess? If you're having a hard time finding whatever your target item is, sometimes going backwards in a level to a previous checkpoint, or even back to the beginning of the stage if you haven't hit a checkpoint at that point, it can provide you with more opportunities to find the item that you are searching for. In this case, we're looking for the Chow. We ended up losing a life, and it sent us backwards, and we ended up finding a Chow that we missed previously. And it's definitely also worth noting in this case that, regardless of how many checkpoints you hit or don't hit, the game keeps your item tracker, your Chow tracker progress separately from your regular checkpoints. Even though we got sent back to the beginning of the stage, it still had it marked that we had saved 3 Chow up to that point, and we were able to go grab that 4th after we lost our life. So, the same is true for any of the Team Chaotix missions in that case, where, for example, in the second set of stages where we were destroying enemies, or in the bullet station stages where we were destroying the capsules, it still kept track of our progress independently of the checkpoints. So we weren't losing progress in that case. We weren't losing progress in our mission, we were just losing progress in the stage, technically. It's kind of interesting to analyze and see how that all ends up working. But hey, that ended up being another kind of short romp. We gathered those Chow up very quickly, very effectively. And it's time to move on with our adventure, which in this case is going to be getting the next Chaos Emerald.
Maybe this wasn't our day.
That being said, completing the Team Chaotix missions quickly doesn't always end up in you getting a very good score. Kind of odd how that ends up working out. But anyway, we end up heading to the next Emerald Challenge, this time with Team Chaotix going after the Scion Chaos Emerald and rushing down a path, looking to avoid those bombs and collect those orbs and speed up nice and quickly. We almost catch it here, but unfortunately, you always have that opportunity to accidentally hit a bomb and ruin your progress forward. as mentioned last time, this is definitely a point in the game where the special stages end up becoming that much more difficult. And you also end up running into difficulties dealing with the mechanics, too. The way it works, you're supposed to be able to run up and down and all around the walls and ceiling and be able to go in any which way you really want to. Honestly, sometimes sticking to the sides of the stage or the ceiling is actually pretty helpful because a lot of the bombs and things like that are down below. If you're not in the path of the bombs, you can't get hit by the bombs. But all that being said, the orbs and things like that are also closer towards the ground, so if you're not collecting the orbs, you can't collect boost, and it makes getting the Chaos Emerald that much harder. But hey, we end up accomplishing that nicely by using some of that sticking to the ceiling strategy there. Though that being said, sometimes the ceilings and the walls are a bit glitchy, and you end up falling off them, and it can kind of screw you up, so it's a bit of a double-edged sword, I'd say. But now it's time to move on to the boss.
Excuse me, miss. I was wondering if I could ask you something.
If it's about a date, it'll have to wait.
Date? You think this is a joke, you little brat?
Now hand over that chow nice and easy.
I bet you're the ones who took chocolate chow.
What?
It's not nice to tease my friends.
Yeah, time to rock and roll!
Charmy, don't be an instigator. But yeah, much like we had the fight between Team Sonic and Team Dark, we now have a fight between Team Rose and Team Chaotix.
There's gotta be a major misunderstanding here, but we can't back down now.
Here we go! We won't lose to a bunch of losers like you!
And remember how I mentioned that the tornado mechanic is the optimal way to take care of these team fights? Team Rose has an even easier time with these fights, considering the fact that Amy's tornado is a projectile, and that ends up wiping out Team Chaotix pretty darn quickly. No rock, paper, scissors mechanics for me, please. I have the power of the wind. But yeah, much like the last fight, there is another side to this.
I'll never let you take cheese from me! I'll do my best, I believe!
Interesting that in the Team Rose fight, Cream actually takes the lead here rather than Amy. But this fight doesn't go nearly as successfully for Team Chaotix, unfortunately. Team Rose, they really lay down the hurt here. SBO is already gone, so trying to use the tornado maneuver is not going to end up working out. It's going to come down to kind of a war of attrition between power characters for the most part. Trying to rely on the flying characters too much doesn't really end up working unless you've got them leveled up, I guess. Because since Thundershoot is naturally just kind of a weak attack, it ends up more or less just kind of stunning the enemies in place. And Team Rose ends up definitely becoming an issue in this fight because yeah, their Team Blast makes them invincible, and that also applies to this fight. So, you want to try and take them out as quickly and smoothly as possible. Or, I guess an optimal strategy would be, if you lose your speed character, jumping off the edge and restarting the fight. And sacrificing a life that way is probably a good strategy in itself, because that ended up working out a lot better there. But anyway, that is going to call it for right now. Thank you very much for watching. This is your good friend Sparky signing off.
This is our duty.
And I will catch you later.